Hey, my name is Jackson Carlstrom, and I'm here with GSW alum Elle Kluksdahl, who is calling in from Anchorage, Alaska. So why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Okay. My name is Elle Kluksdahl. I grew up in Georgia my entire life until I was 19, and then I moved to Alaska. I have five siblings. Four of them are adopted, which is pretty significant. They were all adopted from Kazakhstan at different ages. So three, 1, and 6 months old. And then I have one biological younger sister, and we're all within about 6 years of each other. So we're all pretty close in age.
Can you tell me what the moving process from Georgia to Alaska was like?
So I booked my flight for it was I think the day after finals officially ended for GSW. So it was like the 17th, and it was like a Friday or Thursday night, I believe. And so I had my friend come down. He lives about an hour above, and he drove me to the airport. It was about 2 a.m. when I left GSW, and handed in my room key to my poor RA that had to wake up really early to let me hand in my room key, and then just drove down. We were all pretty tired, pretty groggy, and dropped me off at the airport. My flight was at like 7 a.m. And it was a stressful process getting on my flight, carrying all of my belongings. I had like still the cash from my car being sold on me because I couldn't really deposit it into my account because I had a Georgia bank account, and was going to have to find a new one when I got there. So it was pretty stressful to have everything I own on me that I'm literally wearing or carrying or is on the plane beneath me, and having like your money, your personal belongings, your certificate, your social security card, can be really, really stressful. It was very tiring and an exhausting process. I came up and crashed for the first day and a half that I was in Alaska because I was so tired from that. Um, and then ended up like our apartment fell through twice. So I stayed with someone that I met during the summer in their apartment while they were out of town. Um, for it was about 2 weeks that I stayed there until I finally got into my own place. Just because it was something that happened with the original apartment that we had planned. They didn't have it ready. They thought they would. They told me in Seattle when I was on my way up. So I was about 3 hours from being in Alaska, and had to find somewhere to crash, and then ended up moving into my apartment, and then ended up moving again actually this month. So it was a pretty hectic, stressful process to say the very least.
So once you were in Alaska, how long did it take for you to adjust to it? Like with time differences and temperature, how long did it take you to adjust to all of that?
The time difference was not a big deal for me. The temperature, I actually did a little bit of research on that before coming because I was pretty concerned about coming up they were having -20s and -30s was what they were at. And in Georgia, it was like 60 degrees. Um, I think it was actually like 70 the day I left. It was like a really hot day in winter. And so I had about a 90-degree temperature change coming to Alaska. And that was something that concerned me. So I started doing a little research. I found out that if you turn down like your AC pretty low, so the week before I left, it was at like 61, 59 in my dorm. It was really cold. And I'd go walk around really early in the morning in like shorts and a t-shirt, and it was like 30 degrees to acclimate my body to that. So some nerd research on it helped me transition that way. It took me a little while to get used to the dark because at the point that I came into Alaska was the winter solstice. It was about 2 days before, which is the darkest day in Alaska. We had about 2.5 hours, 3 hours of sunlight, and that was it. It was really weird to never see the sun. Even when it's out, you don't really see it. I mean, it was just dark. That was really weird. I think that was probably the hardest part. And then in the time it took me to adjust to Alaska, I would say I probably didn't adjust all the way until maybe like September last year. It took quite some time to get acclimated, get plugged in with the church, get plugged in with the life group, build a few friendships. And I mean, even then, still building friendships, still learning, and then get adjusted to a different school that uses a different system, a different job, a different state, different laws here, a lot of, and driving in the snow too is a little bit of adjustment. So I think doing a little bit of research, preparing myself for some of the easier things like learning how to drive in snow or adjusting to the temperature definitely helped. I would say probably just the community was what took me the longest to adjust to, and church, just finding like a good church. It took me a little while.
Can you tell me what like some of the biggest differences are between college students in Georgia and Alaska?
Well, college students in Alaska, the average age of college student at our school is about 30. It's not a whole lot of people my age. And by average, that means, you have some people that are 15 taking school there, and you have some people that are in their 50s taking school there. It's a very, very diverse campus. You have people from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of people that didn't grow up in Alaska, and then quite a few people that are from the bush, the valley, or from like little islands that have never lived in a big city. So just you get a lot of different cultures. It's one big melting pot here. And also Alaska students are very, very scholarly. They're very scholarly. And I think in the South, you'll find that they're a little bit more relaxed. Like we still have time to hang out, but college students up here just, I don't have time to hang out with you. I'm going to study this so hard. And then the diversity in age and background, because you'll meet a lot of people that aren't from Alaska here, and a lot of people that are from little small villages.
That's interesting. So I'm assuming you've like found people like you who, are new to Alaska.
Yeah, I found people that grew up in Alaska. I found people that were born, I don't know, one of my good friends and actually my roommate was born in China and grew up in Alaska. I met someone from the Czech Republic. It's just I found other people from the South. Two of my good friends actually grew up in a town about an hour from me in Georgia, which is really funny because it took us 4,000 miles to meet each other, but we've overlapped so much. So I've met people from all different areas and not all like super like-minded, but I think I appreciate having people with different thoughts and opinions than myself and different ages and different backgrounds.
What has it been like being a student missionary at UAA?
It has been very, very strange almost. UAA is a very not Christian college. Alaska as a whole is very not Christian. So I think the approach that I have had is just seeking out relationships and just that one-on-one friendship with college students, and just investing and pouring into them, and loving them.
Okay, so going back to your church they were talking about in Alaska, how did you find it exactly, and how all have you gotten involved in it?
So this was actually the church that we had gone to during the summer every other week in Anchorage, which is why I wanted to branch away from that when I came here, because I wanted to look at other churches in Anchorage as well, because we hadn't really, Anchorage has a lot of churches, but we also have a lot of dying churches. It's called like the church graveyard because all of them have few members. They can't keep up their numbers. They all reach this like peak in members and then just drop drastically down because Anchorage is a very come and go population, because we have so much military and people move to Alaska and then move away very quickly. It's a very like in and out state. So if you can't keep building and you just have those same members, it just drops really quickly. So I did look at like all of the churches in Anchorage, and didn't go to all of them, obviously, but I watched a few sermons and visited one or two, and then came back to the church that I go to now, which is called True North. And I think got to experience it outside of the summer was a really good thing for me. You would assume that I would want to go to the church that I've already been to, but I wanted to see what else was out there. and came back to it. And it was ultimately the life group that drew me back to it. I found a lot of churches that have really good teaching and that I really enjoyed listening to their lessons. But they were also churches that I could walk in and out of without finding any people or having really any real conversation. You just walked straight in, you had the lesson, worship, and you walked out. And that was one of the big differences with True North, is that they're very involved in their body. Our life groups are not just, there's a group of college students, there's kids Sunday schools. Our life group had like two 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, young couples, people with kids, older couples. And so just that, again, like the different dynamic of having a little bit of everyone and something to gain from people older than you and younger than you as well. And it was ultimately like that experience that brought me back, because it's pretty easy to find a church that has good teaching, but to find a church that has, like, they're invested in their members was a little bit more challenging. And then the ways that I've served I started out just with the worship. I really, really enjoy serving in kids ministry, and serving in a little bit more of like the physical aspects. So I've done a few of their like work days, because we just absorbed a smaller church that lost their pastor. They had about 60 members. Those members are now members of our church, and we renovated their building, and now go to church there because we were also in need of a building, because True North is technically a church plant. It's a 10-year-old church plant, but it's a church plant. So we didn't have our own building. We shared. And so some of the physical activities and the labors, like painting or, I don't know, demolition, stuff like that. And then worship has been the other one. And then I think just serving in the life group, and, a lot of the people in the life group, they're in different stages than me. And for me, I have a lot more flexibility in things. I don't have kids. I'm not married. I'm still in college. So there's a lot of freedom in my schedule. So just even grabbing coffee with someone and learning about them and listening to their story, or bringing someone coffee when Anchorage cancels school 4 days in a row and they have their 4 kids home 4 days in a row, with nothing to do because it's so cold, and Anchorage just had 4 feet of snow in like 2 days. So just bringing them over coffee or something, just small practical ways that I can see to serve and invest in the body of the church has been something that I've enjoyed, even if it's just like a cup of coffee or bringing someone dinner or something like that.
What are some of the cool things that you've gotten to do, or places you've been to during your time in Alaska so far?
One of my favorite places that I went to was Juneau, Alaska. They call it like mini San Francisco. It's beautiful. Everything, it's so different. You can rock climb there, which I'll probably do next fall, is what I'm thinking of. One of the other cool places that I've been is out in the valley. So like Wasilla, it's so beautiful. Every day is always different in Alaska. Everything is always different. Every hike you do, it's going to be different every time you do it. There's very little consistency here. Every day looks a little bit different. And we gain 5 minutes of sunlight or lose 5 minutes of sunlight every single day. So every day is quite literally different. And I've got to see the Northern Lights. I actually saw them last night on the way out to my staff dinner in the valley, which was really cool. And it's ridiculously beautiful all the time. It's very hard to imagine living in a state so beautiful and having so many people still not believe that there's a God. Was one of the most shocking things, because it's everywhere up here. It's everywhere else, but when you have 20,000 foot mountains surrounding you and volcanoes and the ocean right up against you and lakes that always look different and sea otters and seals. I think most of the cool stuff I've done has just been scenery, and maybe like rock climbing at the Alaska Rock Gym is one of my favorite pastimes, which isn't something that I could have done in Georgia, but it's something I really enjoy here. And just getting to see Alaska as a state, it's so beautiful. And all of the wildlife that's everywhere too, just whales, and you'll see seals and sea otters, or lake otters they call them, because there are some that aren't actually in the ocean. Yeah, and moose. I've found a few moose in my backyard a few times. It's pretty interesting.
That sounds neat. Are moose similar to what deer are like in Georgia?
Nope, not at all. They're huge and you don't want to mess with them. They're they're pretty quiet and they can jump actually 6 feet. They're pretty fast too, and pretty furious. You don't want to mess with them and you don't want to get between a mom and their kids. You stay away. But they're pretty neat to look at from afar.
What would you say are some of the biggest differences between living in Alaska versus living in Georgia?
I would say flexibility and adaptability to living here. A lot of changes happen all the time. At the start of December, we had literally 4 feet of snow. I was not kidding about the 4 feet of snow. It was like 4 feet of snow in 3 days, which was insane and as insane as you can imagine. You're not going to get to work on time every time because sometimes you have to move 2 feet of snow off your car that you didn't know was going to be there. There's constant changes in the environment. I mean, we have earthquakes, we have windstorms, we have snow. We had like a mini kind of like blizzard in December. Just constant changes and never really know what to expect. Versus in Georgia, there's a little bit more consistency, which I enjoy. I don't enjoy as much of the inconsistency here. I mean, I enjoy it, but the change is still it's a little different, a little difficult. I think the people and keeping an open mind, and you never really know who you're going to meet or where you're going to meet. And it's also, I mean, our town has 400,000 people live in Anchorage, just shy of. And it feels like such a small town. You'll see people that you know everywhere. You'll meet people that you know, that new people that you know. Everyone is connected in some way, which is absolutely insane for such a big. Everyone calls it a big small town because it is. Everyone knows everyone, and it still almost feels like being in Americus, but with like 40,000 more people or 400,000 more people.
I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are some things that you've done outside of school in Alaska in terms of like missions and ministry? Like, what are some cool stories that you have?
So some things I've done outside of school. I mean, I did, I think on Valentine's Day, I handed out little like baggies, and just like got to talk to people about God's love. And that's been pretty cool. One of my friends and I are trying to figure out how to do a little bit more downtown evangelism, and just, I mean, go for a walk. It's such a casual thing you can do and incorporate into your life when you're intentional about it. And then I think a lot of what I've done is just been able to, we have a very large homeless population. So just been able to have a lot of conversations with them. I actually keep usually a few like kits in my car. I mean, we had a downpour during August and it would not stop raining. Everyone that was outside was miserable. So I kept like some raincoats and rain gear in my car, like a water bottle, dry socks, because dry socks was just the one thing that I cannot imagine spending a month in soaking wet socks. And we just keep them in a plastic bag and be intentional about stopping, and pulling over and taking time and just being willing to go into, I mean, a lot of people live down on South Side, and South Side is a very different place than downtown or midtown. You don't see a lot of homeless people down there. It's a very high end community, and you can be in this nice, cushy little bubble and never see anything bad. I actually lived in downtown for a little while, and now I live kind of towards midtown. So it's not like its own cushy bubble. It's a little nicer over here, but it's not cushy. But just still being intentional about where I'm at in Alaska too, because it's so easy to just kind of hide out down south where it feels safe, and you'll see everyone that, thinks and believes like you, but you don't really get to talk to a lot of unbelievers or a lot of people who are hurting and people who really, really need Christ, and people who are willing to hear about it.
Okay, so the last question I have to sort of wrap everything up is, how has continuing your degree in pursuing missions in Alaska impacted you the most? And you can include anything else you want to say or add here as well.
I think continuing my degree in pursuing missions is, this is where I am. This is where I intend to be for a while. Jesus has made it very clear that this is somewhere I'm settling down for at least a little bit. maybe to leave on a mission trip or two here and there, I would still love to. But for the most part, I don't necessarily have intention of leaving. I have intention of putting roots down here and staying in one place. And so that has shifted the mindset of we're here on missions to we are always on missions and every day is still missions. And if you are a believer in Christ, everywhere you go is a mission field. Even if you're in a church, there are people that don't believe. There are people that are unsure. There are younger Christians and there are older Christians there. And there are people to pour into and gain wisdom from. So I think just to set it as this is just everyday life, and keeping it there, and to almost not feel like I'm a missionary here. It's just to feel like, well, this is what we're going to do every day because this is where I am. Is I think one big thing. So continually building up community and settling down and putting roots down, which is a very hard thing for me. This is my 12th move now, so it's a little hard for me to stick in one place and to be put very clear that this is where I'll be for a while. Can be a little bit harder. So still shifting to I live here now and I'm going to be here, while keeping that you're always on mission mindset, is where I'm finding the balance. So just keeping that intentionality every day, because it would be really easy to lose mindset when you don't have a time limit on I'm just going to be here for college. Well, I have like 2 more years left on like a mission trip versus well, I'll be here for a while. It's easy to settle down and to settle away from that. So yeah, finding that balance between the two of them, I think has been what I've focused most on.